The drop was silent. No engines. No flares. Just black sky above and endless jungle below. Sergeant Major Cole Maddox adjusted his glide suit mid-descent, eyes scanning the terrain through his visor. Vorker 7 sprawled beneath him, hostile, humid, and deadly. His boots hit the treetops with a soft rustle. He dropped lower, snagged a branch, and slid into the canopy with the grace of a predator. He landed, crouched. No sound. No light. His heartbeat barely ticked. He waited. Seconds passed. A nearby insect chirped once, then went quiet. Maddox smiled. Even the wildlife could sense him. He tapped his wristpad. A green light blinked. Infiltration successful. Begin Phase 1. Vorker 7 was a mercenary stronghold, far outside the Galactic Council's jurisdiction. To the galaxy it was a dead zone, untouchable. But Earth didn't send diplomats to ask for permission. Not when one of their own had been taken. Maddox knelt beside a thick root, sliding a camo tarp over himself. He pulled out a thermal scope, scanning the valley below. There it was, the hive. Massive durasteel walls surrounded the Crimson Claws compound. Towers buzzed with scanners, motion turrets, and patrolling aliens, Varnakians, Drulek, and others Maddox couldn't name. All killers. He counted movements, routes, weak points. He logged everything. Hours passed. He remained motionless. Sweat pooled under his armor. He didn't blink. Then, movement. A 2-alien patrol entered the east jungle path. They joked loudly in garbled Varnakian. Bet it's just another animal, one said. Nothing survives long in this jungle. Maddox moved. He slid behind them like a shadow, silent among leaves and mist. One patrolman turned slightly, just in time to see a blade flash. No sound. No struggle. 2 bodies vanished into foliage. Maddox dragged them deep into the undergrowth, covering tracks. He looted a comm bead and data chip, wiping the blood from his gloves with mechanical precision. Back at his perch, he tapped into their local channel. Dozens of alien voices filtered through. Jokes. Complaints. Zero awareness. He uploaded the patrol's death log into their feed, subtly altered. Timestamped. Undetectable for now. The mercs would think they were still alive, for the next 2 hours. Then confusion would set in. He moved again. Low. Fast. Precise. By dusk, he'd reached Outpost Theta, a remote monitoring station with a single turret and 3 guards. All were Drulek, their bulky frames visible even in the dimming light. Maddox lay flat under the ridge above, watching. He waited until one broke off to relieve himself behind a container. 30 seconds. That's all he needed. He dropped like a ghost. A garrote looped around the Drulek's neck. One twist. One pull. Body limp. No noise. He moved inside next. Dropped the second with a silenced dart to the neck. The third turned too late. Maddox's combat knife found soft tissue between armor plates. 3 bodies. 3 seconds. Inside the shack, he found maps, generator logs, surveillance feed. Most importantly, he got eyes on the hostage. Human. Male. Shackled in the compound's lower block. Alive. Target confirmed. He whispered into his comm, beginning disruption phase. He set charges on the generator bank. Nothing large, just enough to knock out auxiliary power and scramble security feed. Before leaving, he placed one final surprise, a tiny Earth-made device tucked behind the comm relay. It blinked once, silent confirmation. It would transmit short bursts of jamming and signal echoes. To the mercs, it'd look like glitches. To Maddox, it was a shield. He melted back into the jungle as the charges blew. Distant rumble. Lights flickered across the valley. Maddox smiled behind his mask. Panic always started small. He moved back to his ridge and resumed observation. The compound was buzzing now. Theta Outpost is offline, barked a gruff alien voice over comms. Respond, Theta. Static. Probably equipment failure, another replied. This planet's cursed. Maddox chuckled. As night deepened, storm clouds rolled over the jungle. The mercs pulled back into their walls. Patrols thinned. That was a mistake. Maddox used the storm to cover his movement. Lightning flashed. He ran. Thunder rolled. He stopped. At the cliff edge, he crouched beside a shattered tree and looked down at the valley again. The compound was just a few kilometers away. He tapped into the comms again. New orders echoed. Double patrols near the diplomat. Someone's spooking us. Someone. They didn't know. Not yet. Maddox activated his visor's night vision overlay and whispered, "Let's keep it that way." He returned to his small camp, just a tarp over mud camouflaged with leaf. From a pouch, he pulled a worn photo. A younger man, grinning in fatigues. His brother. 3 years ago, his unit had been captured on the Zardok front. Slaughtered by Crimson Claw mercenaries. The Council had done nothing. No retaliation. No justice. But Earth remembered. And Cole Maddox never forgot. Just before dawn, a soft beep sounded on his wristpad. The patrols weren't checking in. Perfect. He reached into his pack and removed the final piece of gear, a shaped charge with a personalized detonation system. Handcrafted. Silent. Precise. It was time to bleed the mercs. As the first sun rose, lighting the jungle in gold and shadow, Maddox looked through his scope at the mercenary base. Guards were still arguing. Lights flickered. The perfect storm was coming. He tapped his comm again. Phase 1 complete. No response. Just the sound of wind, rain, and distant thunder. He smiled. Time to bring the war to them. Dawn broke over Vorker, 7 with a hiss of steam rising from the jungle floor. The storm had passed, but the compound was far from calm. Inside the walls, mercenaries barked orders, weapons slung, nerves fraying at the edges. 2 patrols were unaccounted for. 1 outpost was completely silent. Their communications glitched every few minutes. At first, they blamed the weather. Now they weren't so sure. Sergeant Maddox crouched in the crook of a massive root system, watching them through infrared lenses. His breathing was measured, steady. He'd already laid the groundwork. It was time to turn the screws. Inside the Crimson Claw base, alien chatter filled the comms. Still no word from Theta. Those idiots are probably asleep. I don't like this. We should check the sector again. Cortal's voice cut through the noise like a blade. If they're dead, we'll find the remains. Until then, lock down the diplomat's cell. Double the guards. The message was clear. Something was wrong, but they had no idea what. Yet, Maddox moved with purpose, cutting through undergrowth until he reached a narrow ravine. A rusted supply drone sputtered nearby, tangled in vines. He pulled it free, cracked the casing, and rewired its guidance chip in under 2 minutes. A makeshift decoy. He sent it buzzing down a false trail toward the western perimeter, broadcasting the stolen comm signal from the dead patrol. Within seconds, alarms blared. Movement west side. Possible survivors. A dozen mercs swarmed toward the sound, guns drawn, shouting over each other. Maddox watched from above, unmoving. He wasn't interested in fighting yet, he wanted confusion. Let them chase ghosts. Back inside the compound, a young Drulek snapped his rifle into ready position. I heard something in the vent system, he told a superior. You're hearing your own paranoia, the officer replied. No. There was a click. A metal on metal. A small device detonated behind them, no more powerful than a firecracker. Enough to scatter their hearing. Maddox had placed it there hours earlier. Predictable routes. Predictable habit. Out in the jungle, the mercs returned from their wild goose chase with nothing to show but exhaustion. Nothing but a broken drone, one grunted. Scrambled our scanners too. Something's screwing with us. No kidding. At their feet, a symbol had been carved into the mud with the edge of a blade. 4 lines and a circle, old Earth military sign for hunted. They stared at it for a long time before someone spoke. Is this human? Another whispered, they're not supposed to be here. Maddox was already gone, moving deeper into the brush. He marked their routes, mapped their responses. Every detour, every overreaction gave him more intel. He looped back near the compound's east fence and crawled beneath a patch of synthetic moss, approaching a small relay station. 2 guards, relaxed posture. Probably low rank. He tossed a pebble. One turned. "Did you hear?" The other dropped as Maddox's suppressed pistol hissed twice. The first never even saw him. He dragged their bodies out of sight, retrieved a pair of wrist tags and a keycard. Perfect. Back at the command center, Quartal stood rigid before a holomap flickering with red zones. "I want that jungle swept. All sectors. You find me what's out there." His second-in-command, a scaled reptilian named Drax, snorted. "You think this is human?" "Humans don't come alone," Quartal growled. "They attack in units." Drax muttered, "Then maybe this one got lost." Quartal narrowed his eyes. "Or maybe this one isn't a unit. Maybe he's something worse." In a small clearing, Maddox sat beside a fallen log, breaking down one of the mercenary pulse rifles he'd taken. The craftsmanship was decent, reliable but predictable. He set it aside and instead modified one of his own Earth-designed mines. He placed it near a game trail where patrols had started passing, half thinking they were the hunters. They weren't. That evening, as a group of 5 mercs marched single file through the trail, the mine activated. It didn't explode. It screamed. A high-pitched sonic burst triggered their headsets and shorted their visors. 3 dropped weapons and clutched their ears. 1 fired blindly and hit a teammate. From the trees, Maddox fired once, then disappeared again. That night, rumors spread like infection. "I swear I saw movement in the trees. They say he doesn't speak. Just watches." My squad heard whispers in their comms. Ghost noises. Quartal slammed his fist on the table. "You're mercenaries, not children. One man doesn't undo an army." But deep down, even he felt it, that creeping dread of an enemy you couldn't see. Maddox found an abandoned lookout post, set up a temporary recon point, and began uploading a pulse burst to Earth Command via relay burst. He encrypted the message 3 times. Package confirmed. Base compromised. Hostage located. Phase 2 underway. Request backup delay. Let them bleed. Maddox. He sat back, drank from a ration pouch, and stared into the jungle. The mission wasn't over. But the fear? That had started. The next morning, 2 more patrols vanished. 1 guard turned on another during an argument and had to be restrained. Paranoia took root. And somewhere just beyond their perimeter, a single human watched from the trees, calm, patient, unshakable. The prison block smelled like rust and sweat. Heavy doors lined the corridor, each one locked with biometric scanners and old-fashioned bolt. At the far end, under flickering lights, was Cell 17. The only human prisoner. Inside, Lieutenant Derek Hayes sat slumped on a bench, his face bruised and lips split, but his eyes were clear. Focused. Unbroken. He looked up when the hallway lights died for 3 seconds. A pattern. He blinked twice. He's here. Outside the walls, Maddox crouched behind a ventilation duct on the upper ledge of the compound. Rain pelted the steel above. His visor displayed motion paths, guard patrols, and a countdown timer. 2 minutes until security grid reset. He whispered into his mic, initiating breach. He slid through the vent shaft, bypassed a laser tripwire, and emerged above the main corridor of the prison wing. Below, 2 guards idled near the checkpoint. One checked his holopad, the other scratched at his shoulder armor. Maddox dropped between them like thunder. One head cracked the floor. The other never drew his weapon. He stepped over the bodies, hacked the control panel, and opened Cell 17. Derek Hayes stood up, jaw clenched. "About time. Still got that smart mouth, huh?" Maddox smirked. "You can walk." Hayes nodded. "Took their worst. Never gave them anything. Good. Let's get out before they ask for more." They moved fast and silent through the maintenance corridors Maddox had mapped days earlier. Hayes limped slightly but kept pace. Thought you were still blacklisted, Hayes said under his breath. I was. This mission doesn't officially exist. Earth send anyone else? No. Hayes didn't question it. He just smiled grimly. Figures. Alarms screamed just as they reached the outer junction. The body count had finally been discovered. Cortal's voice boomed over the loudspeakers. Lockdown initiated. All guards to Block 7. Intruder confirmed. Maddox shoved a shock charge into the junction box. Sparks flew, and doors along the east wall slammed shut. They ducked into a side corridor. Mercenaries came rushing from the opposite end 4, maybe 5. Maddox shoved Hayes behind a pillar. He stepped out and opened fire. 3 precise shots, knees, neck, chest. The last 2 returned fire, but Maddox was gone before the bolts struck the wall. He reappeared at their flank and dropped both before they could turn. Hayes emerged. Still got it. Maddox checked his mag. Didn't lose it. They reached the armory access hatch. Maddox punched in the override. Inside, crates of weapons and armor lined the walls. Hayes grabbed a carbine and an exo-rig. Maddox loaded EMP darts and flash pellets into his belt. Hayes pulled on a vest, grimacing. Still tight. You got soft in that cell. I'll survive. Above them, Cortal was losing control. Seal all exits. This human dies tonight. Drax hesitated. We underestimated him. No. We underprepared. Call the Blackfangs. I want him surrounded. Now. Maddox led Hayes to the secondary launch pad. The compound's southeast corner was unguarded, thanks to Maddox's early sabotage. But before they reached the ladder, Hayes froze. A group of alien children, prisoners from a prior raid, were huddled in a small cage near the fuel storage. They stared silently, wide-eyed. Forgotten by the mercs. Hayes turned. We can't leave them. Maddox's jaw tightened. Time was short. Extraction window was closing. He looked at the timer on his wrist. 50 seconds. I'll make it work. Get them ready. Hayes nodded and sprinted toward the cage. Maddox moved to the control node and planted 2 final charges. One to blow the pad's support. The other to light up the fuel tanks as a distraction. Then came the footsteps. Heavy, fast, organized. The Blackfangs. Elite alien mercs. No chatter. No hesitation. They appeared like ghosts at the north gate, armor jet black, visors glowing faint red. 10 of them. Maddox dropped smoke and dragged Hayes and the kids into a loading bay. Bolts hissed past them, carving into the steel. Maddox knelt and returned fire, downing 2 of the elites with precision shots to the throat. He activated the fuel charge. Boom. Fire roared behind them, engulfing the pad and forcing the remaining Blackfangs into cover. Move! Maddox barked. They burst out the side of the bay, headed for the evac point, an old mining tunnel Maddox had reactivated the night before. Explosions rocked the compound behind them. Turrets shut down. Power flickered. Sirens went wild. Hayes carried one of the smaller alien children. Maddox covered the rear, firing short bursts, buying time. They reached the tunnel. A sleek recon pod awaited, small, fast, and cloaked. Everyone in! Maddox shouted. Hayes shoved the last child inside. Maddox followed, sealing the hatch. The pod launched. As the compound shrank behind them, Hayes looked over. Why'd you really come for me? Maddox didn't answer right away. Then, your family. Hayes blinked. Didn't think Earth remembered. Maddox stared out the viewport. They didn't. He looked back at Hayes. I did. Behind them, the Crimson Claw compound burned. Dozens dead. Systems ruined. Reputation shattered. And for the first time, alien mercenaries across the outer fringe began whispering a name they'd never feared before. Green Beret. The recon pod coasted through the upper atmosphere, silent as starlight. Below, the remains of the Crimson Claw compound smoldered in ruin, sending black smoke into the alien sky. Maddox sat motionless in the cockpit, one hand steady on the flight controls, the other gripping a small chip. the security logs he'd ripped from the compound before extraction. Behind him, Lieutenant Hayes helped settle the rescued alien children. They didn't speak Earth Standard, but their relief didn't need translation. Fear had left their eyes. "You think that message got through?" Hayes asked, his voice low. Maddox nodded. Earth Command confirmed receipt. "They'll scrub the mission from public record by morning." Hayes leaned back. "We saved them. Wrecked that base. Crippled a Merc network. And it won't even make a footnote." "It's not about the record," Maddox replied, voice calm. "It's about the ripple." Far below, Cortal stood in the ash of his compound. A breathing mask covered half his face, burned from the final blast. Scorched armor clung to his frame. He ignored the pain. "What do you mean, they escaped?" he growled. Drax knelt beside the wreckage, holding a broken datapad. All systems were compromised. He knew our grid, our blind spots, even our weapon cache layout. It wasn't war. It was surgical. Cortal's fists clenched. "One human did this." "Yes," Drax whispered. "And he left a message." Cortal looked up. Drax handed him a metal tag. It was Earth military, old, worn, scratched, but legible. On the back, "You were never the hunters." In orbit, Maddox steered the recon pod toward the rendezvous point, a cloaked Earth corvette hidden inside a dead moon's crater. As it came into view, Hayes exhaled in relief. "Never thought I'd see that ship again," he muttered. Maddox said nothing. He was staring at a blinking warning on the NAV screen. "Motion. Rear sector." He tapped a control. Rear cameras lit up. A black craft, angular and fast, hugging their trail. "Crimson Claw strike ship," Maddox said coldly. "They're not done." Hayes gritted his teeth. "How the hell did they track us?" Maddox scanned the pod systems. Hitchhiker drone. Must have latched on during launch. He turned the pod in a sharp dive. "We drop them now or bring them to the fleet." Hayes checked his carbine. "What's the plan?" Maddox's eyes narrowed. "We split." He opened the side hatch midriff. Wind howled through the chamber. "You take the pod, reach the corvette. I'll deal with the tail." Hayes hesitated. "You're gonna take on a full ship with what?" "Harsh language." Maddox gave a thin smile. "Got something better." He tossed Hayes the chip. "This proves Crimson Claw's violation of interstellar accords. Earth'll use it. You just have to get it there." Hayes locked eyes with him. "You come back." "No promises." And then Maddox jumped. He descended fast, landing hard on a jagged cliff ledge overlooking the chase corridor. The enemy ship roared overhead, sleek and armed. Maddox sprinted toward a buried supply cache he'd placed during insertion, just in case. Inside, a rail launcher, micromissiles, and an old Earth tech drone, EMP loaded. He deployed the drone and fired a beacon dart into the ship's underbelly. The drone followed. Seconds later, a pulse surged through the air. The craft stuttered. Lights blinked. Engines faltered. It veered, then slammed into the ridge below with a bone-shaking crash. Maddox approached the wreck, weapon raised. Out crawled two of the Blackfangs. Their armor crackled, visors dimmed. But their knives were still sharp. Maddox dropped one with a shoulder shot and pivoted to engage the second. The alien lunged, blade slicing toward his chest. Maddox caught the wrist, twisted, and drove his elbow into its throat. The creature choked and collapsed. He stepped over the body. No hesitation. No noise. Hours later, Maddox stood aboard the Earth corvette, silent in the debrief chamber. Hayes sat across from him, now cleaned up, patched, and speaking directly to command via hololink. "We have proof of multiple war crimes," Hayes said. "Illegal abductions, biological experimentation, unauthorized weapons testing on civilians." The Admiral on screen nodded slowly. "Understood. Operation Ash Veil is officially terminated. You'll both be debriefed en route." Hayes looked over at Maddox. "He deserves commendation." "He was never here," the Admiral replied. The feed cut out. Later, on the observation deck, Hayes joined Maddox. Stars drifted past. The void, as endless as always. I owe you, Hayes said. You'd have done the same, Maddox answered. Still, Hayes added, we need more like you. No, Maddox said, watching the stars. You only need one. They stood in silence for a while. News of the attack spread fast through the mercenary underworld. The Crimson Claw suffered crippling losses, abandoned their forward bases, and retreated into deeper space. Their reputation, once untouchable, now cracked with fear. They spoke of the ghost in the jungle, the man who turned shadows into weapons, the one who came alone and left a legend.